Ever feel like true leadership is a bit of a paradox? We're often told it's about taking charge, wielding authority.
Right.
But then we encounter these figures throughout history and even in our own lives who embody a totally different kind of power,
Yeah.
one rooted in service and selflessness. And that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Okay.
You've shared some readings for the 29th Sunday in Ordinary Time. Isaiah 53.1011, Psalm 33.4 to 5, 1822, Hebrews 4.1416, and the Gospel of Mark 10.3545. And they've got some pretty profound things to say about sacrifice, redemption, and this whole idea of what it really means to lead. Thankfully, I've got our expert here to help us unpack it all.
It's fascinating how these texts, separated by centuries, still speak so powerfully to the human condition.
Right.
They grapple with those timeless questions about power, purpose, and the surprising ways greatness can emerge.
Right. And they don't shy away from the tough stuff either. Like, take Isaiah 53.10:11. We've got this image of the suffering servant crushed and afflicted, yet somehow victorious. It's
Yeah.
powerful, but I'll admit, a little perplexing too.
Imagine being crushed under the weight of the world's pain, yet rising above it,
Yeah.
not through force, but through resilience born of compassion. That's the core of this prophecy in Isaiah.
Yeah.
It's not your typical image of a triumphant leader, is it? And yet, it foreshadows the very essence of Jesus' mission and identity.
Okay, that makes total sense. It's like strength found in unexpected places. But then there's that line about seeing descendants in a long life. We know Jesus didn't have children in the traditional sense, so what's the deeper meaning there?
It's not about a biological family tree,
Yeah.
but a legacy of transformed lives. Think about it. His descendants are all those who carry on his teachings, who embody his radical message of love and service. That impact echoes through generations.
Wow, it's like ripples spreading out, touching lives across time. It's humbling to think we can all be part of that ripple effect.
Right.
Speaking of ripples, we move into Psalm 33, which feels like a total shift in tone. It's a song of praise all about God's trustworthiness, mercy, protection.
Right.
It's beautiful, but how does this tie into this whole idea of a suffering servant?
Imagine the weight of the world on your shoulders, the knowledge of suffering to come even for Jesus. Those moments in the Garden of Gethsemane must have felt incredibly heavy. Psalm 33 is a reminder that even in those dark moments, even when we face our own trials, there's a source of hope.
Okay.
It's that unwavering faith, that reliance on something greater than ourselves that allows us to endure.
It's about holding on to hope even when things feel impossible.
Yes.
And maybe that's where true strength lies.
Yeah.
But speaking of facing trials, Hebrews 4.14 to 16, particularly the term high priest, really caught my attention. I have to admit, my knowledge of Old Testament religious figures is a bit rusty. Could you give us a little refresher?
Of course. In the Old Testament, the high priest was like a bridge between God and the people, offering sacrifices for their sins, pleading their case. Now, what's interesting about this passage in Hebrews is that it calls Jesus our high priest, but with a crucial difference. He's not some distant figure removed from our struggles. This passage emphasizes Jesus' compassion and understanding of human weakness because he lived it.
He gets it. He's been there in the trenches, so to speak.
Exactly.
Hmm.
He experienced temptation, pain, and suffering just like we do. Yet, he remained without sin.
Wow.
This makes him uniquely able to empathize and intercede for us. Have you ever felt like your struggles weren't understood, like no one truly got what you were going through?
Oh, for sure.
That's where the idea of Jesus, having walked a mile in our shoes, being our advocate, becomes so incredibly powerful.
That's really beautiful. He doesn't just offer forgiveness, he offers understanding, empathy.
Right.
It challenges those typical images of power, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like those in charge should be the ones who are willing to be vulnerable, to connect with those they lead on a human level. It's a powerful message, but let's be honest, it's easier said than done.
It is a challenge, isn't it?
Mm.
And that's where our gospel reading for today comes in. This whole idea of power through service plays out dramatically in the story of James and John.
Those ambitious fellas. Yeah, they wanted the VIP treatment in Jesus' kingdom, right? Haven't we all been there at some point, hoping for that corner office, the best seat at the table?
It's a timeless human desire wanting recognition, wanting that top spot. Mark 10.3545 lays bare that very human struggle, even among Jesus' closest companions. They weren't immune to the allure of status and prestige.
Okay, but then Jesus, in his typical way, uses this kind of tone-deaf request as a teaching moment, right? He doesn't shame them, but he definitely redirects their thinking. He asks them if they're willing to drink from his cup, undergo the same baptism he's facing, essentially asking, are you willing to pay the price of true greatness?
And that price, as we know, was higher than they could have possibly imagined at that moment.
Yeah.
They hadn't yet witnessed the crucifixion, the ultimate act of self-sacrificing love. It's easy to say, sign me up for glory, when you don't grasp the cost.
It's like they're picturing a victory parade, not realizing the path to true victory often leads through immense suffering. And this is where Jesus flips the script on leadership. He says, "Whoever wishes to be great among you will be your servant, the slave of all." Talk about a
It's
paradox.
a radical redefinition of power, one that flies in the face of every worldly ambition. Think about it in Jesus' time, and even now, the world tells us to climb the ladder, to seek our own gain, to be in charge.
Hmm.
But Jesus is saying true leadership isn't about wielding authority, but about leveraging your influence to lift others, to empower, not control.
So ditch the throne and pick up a towel, right? It's about service, not status, humility over hubris.
Mhm.
And this whole conversation brings us right back to that enigmatic figure in Isaiah, the suffering servant.
Precisely. The one who embodies true power through vulnerability, who finds strength in serving others even to the point of death. It's a model of leadership that continues to challenge and inspire us today.
It makes you really examine what it means to lead, whether it's in our families, our workplaces, or even just in our everyday interactions. So how do we even begin to put these radical ideas into practice? How do we reconcile this ancient wisdom with the realities of our modern world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a single easy answer. But maybe it begins with shifting our perspective. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
we're so conditioned to equate success with outward signs of power, money, titles, the number of followers we have online. These readings invite us to consider a different kind of success,
Right.
one that's less about what we acquire and more about what we give, how we serve.
It's funny, there's that quote, and I wish I could remember who said it, about the best way to find yourself being to lose yourself in the service of others. But that's tough. It's like our whole culture is pushing us in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Promote yourself, build your brand, be the loudest voice in the room.
It's true. But here's the thing. We all crave meaning, a sense of purpose. And sometimes, paradoxically, we discover that by looking outward, focusing on the needs of others, not just our own ambitions.
So where do we even start? I mean, I get wanting to embrace these ideas, but it feels kind of daunting.
It doesn't require grand gestures. I think it's about those everyday choices, those small acts of service that might go unnoticed but can ripple outward. Maybe it's choosing to listen with your full attention when your friend needs to talk,
Sure.
offering help without being asked, or using your skills and talents to make someone else's life a little bit better.
It's like choosing humility over hubris in those daily interactions, putting someone else's needs before our own desire to be right or to be recognized.
It's about remembering that cup that Jesus spoke of. It wasn't filled with worldly power or prestige, but with sacrifice and love. That's a true measure of greatness, and it's available to all of us.
Wow. Talk about a powerful message to sit with. It's a lot to think about, and I really appreciate you diving into these readings with me. And to you listening, we hope this deep dive has given you some new insights into these familiar texts, maybe even a bit of inspiration for your own life and leadership journey. Until next time, keep seeking, questioning, and diving deep.